thought I knew where I stood in my family until one rainy Tuesday afternoon when everything I believed about love, loyalty, and family came crashing down. It wasn't even supposed to be my discovery. I was just trying to help my parents organize their important documents because, as usual, they couldn't figure out the filing system I'd set up for them months earlier. I'd been the reliable daughter for as long as I could remember. While my younger brother Marcus spent his 20s bouncing between part-time jobs and get-rich-quick schemes, I was the one who showed up. When Mom needed someone to drive her to doctor's appointments, I rearranged my work schedule. When Dad's back went out and he couldn't maintain the yard, I spent my weekends with a lawnmower and hedge trimmers. When their ancient furnace died in the middle of winter, guess whose credit card covered the emergency replacement? If you're enjoying this story and want to hear what happens next, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps me bring you more incredible real-life stories. And don't forget to share this with someone who might relate. We all have family drama, right? That particular day, I was sitting cross-legged on their living room floor, surrounded by stacks of papers that looked like they hadn't been touched since the Clinton administration. Mom was in the kitchen making her famous lemon bars, her way of thanking me for yet another favor, while Dad dozed in his recliner, the afternoon news playing softly in the background. "Honey, just throw away anything that looks old," Mom had called out earlier, but I knew better. These were my parents we're talking about. They'd probably kept their first apartment lease from 1978. So I was methodically going through each document, creating piles for taxes, medical records, insurance papers, and miscellaneous items. That's when I found it. A manila folder tucked between some old warranty papers and a collection of birthday cards I'd sent them over the years. The tab read, "Estate Planning, Updated Will," in Mom's careful handwriting. My heart did a little skip. Not from excitement, but from that weird feeling you get when you know you're about to see something you probably shouldn't. I almost put it back. Almost. But curiosity won, especially since I figured I'd probably be the one handling their affairs someday anyway. Marcus couldn't even handle his own car registration without calling me for help. The first few pages were standard legal jargon that made my eyes glaze over. Powers of attorney, medical directives, funeral arrangements, all the practical stuff that responsible adults take care of. I felt a little proud that my parents had finally gotten their act together on this front. Then I reached the section about asset distribution. I read it once, then twice, then a third time, because surely I was misunderstanding something. The house I'd helped them buy 15 years ago by co-signing the loan when their credit wasn't quite good enough, was going to Marcus. Their savings account, which had grown substantially thanks to the monthly loans I'd been giving them that somehow never got paid back. Marcus. Dad's vintage car collection that I'd spent countless weekends helping him restore. Marcus. Even Mom's jewelry, including the antique pieces that had supposedly been promised to me since I was a little girl. Marcus. My name appeared exactly once in the entire document, in a generic paragraph about loving both our children equally, followed by a single line that made my stomach drop. "To our daughter Olivia, we leave our gratitude for her constant support and care." Gratitude. After 10 years of being their unpaid handywoman, financial advisor, and personal assistant, they were leaving me their gratitude. I sat there staring at the papers, my hands trembling slightly. The smell of lemon bars wafted in from the kitchen, and I could hear Mom humming some old song she'd sung to us as kids. Dad's soft snoring provided a steady background rhythm. It was such a normal, peaceful moment, and yet everything had just shifted beneath my feet. "Olivia, sweetie, how's it going in there?" Mom's voice broke through my stunned silence. I quickly shuffled the will back into its folder, my mind racing. "Fine, Mom. Just making progress." But nothing was fine. Nothing would ever be fine again. Because in that moment, I realized that everything I'd thought I knew about my place in this family was a lie. I wasn't the reliable daughter they treasured. I was the reliable daughter they took advantage of. There's a difference, and it's a big one. As I mechanically continued sorting through the remaining papers, my brain was working overtime. How long had this will been in place? Had they always planned to leave everything to Marcus, or was this a recent decision? And if so, what had I done wrong? What had Marcus done right? The lemon bars were ready, and Mom brought me a plate with a glass of cold milk, just like when I was 7 years old, and helping her organize her recipe box. "You're such a good daughter," she said, kissing the top of my head. I don't know what we'd do without you." I managed a weak smile and took a bite of the lemon bar, but it tasted like ash in my mouth. Because now I knew exactly what they'd do without me. They'd give everything to Marcus and sleep just fine at night. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that will, those careful legal phrases that essentially said I was worth nothing more than a thank you note. By Thursday morning, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to pretend I hadn't seen it, and I wasn't going to wait for them to bring it up on their own, because let's be honest, they probably never would have. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and drove straight to their house. My hands were shaking as I parked in the driveway, right next to Marcus's beat-up sedan. Of course he was there, probably sleeping until noon in his childhood bedroom while Mom made him breakfast and did his laundry. I found them exactly where I expected. Mom in the kitchen making Marcus's favorite pancakes, Dad reading the newspaper at the kitchen table, and Marcus slouched over a bowl of cereal scrolling through his phone. The picture of domestic bliss, funded entirely by my bank account. "Olivia," Mom's face lit up. "What a nice surprise. Are you staying for breakfast? I made extra pancakes. Actually, I need to talk to you all about something." I pulled the estate planning folder from my purse and set it on the table with more force than necessary. The slap of paper against wood made everyone look up. Dad's face went pale immediately. Marcus just looked confused, probably wondering why everyone suddenly seemed tense. Mom's smile faltered as she recognized the folder. "Olivia, sweetie, you shouldn't have been looking through our private." "Private?" I cut her off, my voice sharper than I'd ever used with her before. "Since when are your finances private from me? I've been managing your budget for 3 years. I co-signed your mortgage. I've paid for half the repairs on this house." Marcus finally looked up from his phone. "What's going on?" I turned to him, this 26-year-old man who still lived at home and had never held a job for longer than 6 months. "What's going on, Marcus, is that Mom and Dad have decided you deserve everything they own, and I deserve a pat on the head." "Olivia, it's not that simple," Dad said, his voice taking on that patronizing tone he used when he thought I was being dramatic. "Really? Because it seems pretty simple to me. House, savings, cars, jewelry, all Marcus. The daughter who's been keeping you afloat for the past decade gets gratitude. Literally, that's what it says in your will." Mom sat down heavily in her chair, the pancake spatula still in her hand. "We thought you'd understand. You have a good job, you're independent. Marcus needs more help. Marcus needs to grow up." The words exploded out of me with years of pent-up frustration. "He's not a child, Mom. He's a grown man who's never had to face consequences, because you two keep bailing him out." Marcus finally seemed to grasp the situation. "Look, I didn't ask for any of this." "No, you never ask for anything. You just take it." I pulled out one of the kitchen chairs and sat down across from him. "When's the last time you contributed to this household? When's the last time you helped with bills or repairs or even grocery shopping?" "I help around the house," he mumbled. I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even me. "You mean you occasionally take out the trash when Mom asks you 3 times? You consider that helping?" Dad cleared his throat. "Olivia, Marcus has had some struggles finding his direction. For 6 years." I slammed my hand on the table. "He's been finding his direction for 6 years while I've been finding my way to the ATM to support all of you." The silence stretched between us. Mom was staring at her pancakes like they held the answers to life's greatest mysteries. Dad was folding and refolding his newspaper. Marcus had gone back to his phone, probably posting on social media about family drama. Finally, Mom spoke up. "We raised you to be strong and independent. We're proud of who you've become. And you raised him to be helpless and entitled. Is that something to be proud of too?" "That's not fair," Mom said, but her voice lacked conviction. "What's not fair is spending a decade being the good daughter, the responsible one, the one who shows up, only to find out that loyalty means nothing to you. What's not fair is watching you enable Marcus's failures while taking my success for granted." I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the tile floor. "I need to ask you something directly, and I want an honest answer. Do you love him more than me?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Mom's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't answer. Dad cleared his throat again but said nothing. And Marcus just kept scrolling through his phone like this conversation wasn't about his entire future. Your silence is an answer, I said quietly. It's not about love, Dad finally said. It's about need. Right, he needs, I provide, got it. I picked up the folder and tucked it back into my purse. Well, here's something you all need to understand. I'm done being the family ATM. I'm done being taken for granted. And I'm done pretending that this is normal. Olivia, don't be dramatic, Mom said, wiping her eyes with her apron. Dramatic? I've been subsidizing your lifestyle for years, and you've repaid me by cutting me out of your will. If that's not worth being dramatic about, I don't know what is. I walked toward the door, then turned back one more time. I want you to think about something. When you're gone, and Marcus inherits everything, who's going to teach him how to manage it? Who's going to show him how to maintain the house, handle the finances, deal with the responsibilities? Because it sure won't be me. Marcus looked up from his phone for the first time in 10 minutes. What's that supposed to mean? I looked at this man-child, who was about to inherit everything my hard work had helped preserve, and I felt nothing but pity. It means you're about to get everything you never earned, and you have no idea how to keep it. As I walked to my car, I heard Mom calling after me, but I didn't turn around. For the first time in my adult life, I was putting myself first, and it felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. The drive home was a blur of anger, hurt, and something else I couldn't quite identify. It took me until I was sitting in my own driveway to realize what that feeling was. Relief. The truth was finally out, and now I could stop pretending that everything was okay. But I had no idea that this was just the beginning. Because when you stop being the person everyone expects you to be, they don't just let you go quietly, they fight back. The first week of my newfound independence was blissfully quiet. No frantic calls about broken appliances, no texts asking me to pick up groceries, no casual mentions of overdue bills that somehow became my responsibility. For the first time in years, my evenings belonged to me, and I spent them doing things I'd forgotten. I enjoyed reading novels, taking long baths, actually cooking meals for myself instead of grabbing fast food between family emergencies. I should have known it wouldn't last. My parents had become so accustomed to my financial safety net that they probably assumed my confrontation was just a temporary tantrum. They were about to learn otherwise. The reality check came on a Tuesday morning when I was getting ready for work. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Water heater died. Need $1, $200 for replacement. Can you handle it today? No, please. No, could you help us out? Just a demand, like I was still their personal bank account. I stared at the message for a full minute, then typed back, Sorry, not my problem anymore. Maybe Marcus can handle it. My phone rang immediately. Then again. I let every call go to voicemail. By lunch, I had 17 missed calls and a string of increasingly desperate text messages. Mom had joined the campaign. Olivia, please don't be stubborn. We need hot water. You know Marcus doesn't have this kind of money. That evening, I finally listened to the voicemails. They started reasonable. Dad explaining that the water heater had flooded the basement and needed immediate replacement. But as the day progressed and I didn't respond, the messages grew more frantic. Olivia, this is serious. We can't live without hot water. Your mother had to heat water on the stove just to wash her hair. Is this really what you want? Fine, be selfish. But when we get sick from not having proper sanitation, that's on you. The guilt trip was classic manipulation, and for a moment, just a moment, I felt that familiar tug of responsibility. Then I remembered the will, and the feeling passed. I texted back, call a plumber, get a loan, ask Marcus to get a job, figure it out like adults. The response was immediate. Mom, how can you be so cruel? We're your parents. Me, and Marcus is your son, the one you're leaving everything to. Maybe it's time he started earning it. Then came the call I'd been expecting. Marcus finally forced to engage with a family crisis that couldn't be solved by scrolling through social media. Liv, come on. His voice was wheedling, the same tone he'd used as a kid when he wanted something. You know I don't have that kind of money lying around. Then get a job, Marcus, a real job, with a salary and benefits and responsibilities. It's not that simple. The job market is tough right now. I almost laughed. The job market has been tough For the entire 6 years you've been living at home. Funny how I managed to find work anyway. You don't understand what it's like. I understand exactly what it's like. I understand what it's like to work 40 hours a week and then spend my weekends fixing mom and dad's problems. I understand what it's like to sacrifice my social life because someone always needs something. What I don't understand is how a grown man can live at home for 6 years and think that's acceptable. There was silence on the other end. Then, they're gonna freeze without hot water. It's September, Marcus, and there are these amazing inventions called hotels if it gets really desperate. You've changed, he said, and there was genuine hurt in his voice. You used to care about family. That hit harder than I expected. I did care. I cared so much that I forgot to care about myself. But caring about family is supposed to be a two-way street. When's the last time any of you asked how I was doing? Not what you needed from me, but how I was actually doing. Another silence. We both knew the answer. The next few days brought a parade of guilt trips that would have made a Catholic grandmother proud. Mom showed up at my office, red-eyed and dramatic, carrying a bag of homemade cookies as a peace offering. Sweetheart, I don't understand why you're doing this to us, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk like she planned to stay a while. We love you. You're our daughter. I'm your daughter when you need money. The rest of the time, I'm just an obligation. That's not true. But even as she said it, she couldn't meet my eyes. When's the last time you called me just to chat? When's the last time you invited me to dinner without needing help with something first? When's the last time you asked about my job, my friends, my life? Mom twisted the handle of her purse, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood. We've been so stressed about money lately. You've been stressed about money for 10 years, Mom. And for 10 years, I've been your solution. But I'm done being a solution to problems I didn't create. The water heater. Got fixed, didn't it? I checked their social media. Marcus had posted a selfie with a plumber, captioned, "Adulting is hard, but someone's gotta do it." At least he was trying, finally. Mom nodded reluctantly. Marcus borrowed money from his friend Tyler. Good, that's what normal people do when they have emergencies. They figure it out. But Tyler charges interest. So do credit card companies. Welcome to the real world. I walked her to the elevator, and as the doors closed between us, I saw something in her face I'd never seen before. Not just hurt, but genuine confusion. She really didn't understand why I was upset. In her mind, this was just how families worked. Some people give, some people take, and everyone's supposed to be happy with their role. But I wasn't happy with my role anymore. And as the weeks passed and the calls became less frequent, I started to realize something important. I'd been enabling their dysfunction just as much as they'd been taking advantage of me. By always swooping in to fix their problems, I'd prevented them from learning to fix things themselves. It was a hard lesson for all of us, but it was about to get harder, because my parents weren't ready to accept their new reality. And when people are used to getting their way, they don't give up easily. They were about to show me just how far they'd go to get their personal ATM back online. If I thought my parents would eventually accept my boundaries and move on, I was living in a fantasy. 3 weeks into my financial independence strike, they pulled out the big guns. And by big guns, I mean emotional manipulation tactics that would make a soap opera writer jealous. It started with the Facebook posts. Mom had never been much of a social media user, but suddenly her profile was full of cryptic status updates about ungrateful children and family loyalty. Dad joined in with passive-aggressive posts about how some people forget where they came from, and the younger generation doesn't understand sacrifice. At first, I just rolled my eyes. But then the extended family started getting involved. My phone rang on a Saturday morning while I was enjoying my first leisurely weekend in months. It was my Aunt Carol, Mom's sister, and her voice had that syrupy sweet tone that meant trouble. Olivia, honey, I heard about the little disagreement you're having with your parents. Little disagreement. Right. Hi, Aunt Carol, what can I do for you? Well, I'm just concerned, sweetie. Your mother called me crying yesterday. She says you've abandoned them completely. I closed my eyes and counted to 5. That's not exactly what happened. She says they needed help with an emergency, and you just ignored them. That doesn't sound like the Olivia I know. Here we go. The family flying monkeys had been deployed. Aunt Carol, did she mention why I'm upset with them? Something about a will? Honey, that's just paperwork. Family is what matters. Just paperwork. I actually laughed out loud. Right. Paperwork that shows exactly how much I matter to this family. Oh, sweetie, you know your parents love you. They're just worried about Marcus. He's had such a hard time finding his way. He's 26, Aunt Carol. When exactly is he supposed to find his way? There was a pause. Well, everyone develops at their own pace. I was paying bills and working 2 jobs at 22. Marcus is playing video games in his childhood bedroom at 26. There's a difference between developing at your own pace and refusing to develop at all. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Aunt Carol alternating between guilt trips and lectures about family loyalty. By the time I hung up, I had a headache and 3 more missed calls from various relatives who had apparently been briefed on Operation Guilt Trip Olivia. But the real escalation came that evening. I was making dinner when someone started pounding on my door. Not knocking, pounding. I looked through the peephole and saw Marcus, and he looked furious. I opened the door with the chain still attached. What do you want, Marcus? We need to talk. Now. We can talk through the door. Olivia, open the damn door. I'm not gonna hurt you. Against my better judgment, I let him in. He immediately started pacing around my living room like a caged animal. Do you have any idea what you've done? He said, whirling around to face me. I stopped enabling your lazy lifestyle. You're welcome. Mom hasn't stopped crying for 3 days. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof. And all because you're having some kind of quarter-life crisis tantrum. Quarter-life crisis? I stared at him in disbelief. Marcus? I'm 32. And this isn't a tantrum. This is me finally standing up for myself. Standing up for yourself by destroying our family? Our family was already destroyed. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. He slumped onto my couch without being invited, suddenly looking more defeated than angry. Liv, I know you're mad about the will thing, but you have to understand, Mom and Dad are just trying to look out for me. And what about looking out for me? You don't need looking out for. You've got your life together. There it was. The assumption that had been driving me crazy for years. Having my life together doesn't mean I don't deserve consideration. It doesn't mean I should be taken for granted. But you're good at handling things. You always have been. So because I'm competent, I should just accept being treated like a second-class daughter? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a voice smaller than I'd heard from him since we were kids, he said, I didn't know you felt like that. How could you know? You've never paid attention to anyone but yourself. That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time you asked me about my life, my job, my relationships? When's the last time you offered to help me with anything? He couldn't answer, because we both knew the truth. Our relationship had been one-directional for so long that neither of us knew how to make it work any other way. Look, he said finally, I get that you're upset. But Mom and Dad are really struggling without your help. The water heater thing was just the beginning. The car needs repairs, the roof is leaking, and Dad's arthritis is getting worse. They need you. They need someone. That someone doesn't have to be me. Who else is going to help them? I looked at my brother. Really looked at him. At 26, he still had the soft features of someone who'd never faced real hardship. His clothes were clean and new, his hair perfectly styled, his hands uncalloused. He looked like what he was, a child who'd never been forced to grow up. You are, I said quietly. Me? Liv, I can't. You can't what? Work? Save money? Take responsibility? Why not? I'm not like you. I'm not good at that stuff. You're not good at it because you've never had to be. Mom and Dad made sure of that, and I helped by always swooping in to fix everything. I sat down across from him, suddenly feeling exhausted. Marcus, do you want to know what the real tragedy is? It's not that Mom and Dad prefer you. It's that they've turned you into someone who can't function without them. He looked genuinely confused. What do you mean? I mean that when they're gone and you inherit everything, you're going to lose it all. Because you don't know how to manage money, maintain a house, or handle adult responsibilities. They think they're helping you, but they're setting you up to fail. For the first time in the conversation, Marcus looked scared. I could learn. When? You're 26 and you've never held a job for longer than 6 months. You live at home and let Mom do your laundry. You don't even know how to change the oil in your car." The silence stretched between us. Outside, I could hear my neighbors, kids playing in the yard, their laughter a sharp contrast to the heavy atmosphere in my living room. "So what am I supposed to do?" Marcus asked finally. "Start acting like an adult. Get a real job. Move out. Learn to take care of yourself and help take care of them." "And if I do that, will things go back to normal?" I shook my head. "There is no going back, Marcus. Normal was broken. We need to figure out how to build something better." He left shortly after that, looking more thoughtful than I'd seen him in years. I had no idea if our conversation would make any difference, but at least he finally understood that this wasn't just a phase one was going through. Unfortunately, my parents were about to prove they weren't ready to accept the new reality, and their next move would test every boundary I'd worked so hard to establish. I thought my conversation with Marcus might have been a turning point. For about a week, things were surprisingly quiet. No desperate phone calls, no guilt-trip texts, no relatives showing up to lecture me about family values. I actually started to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were finally accepting the new boundaries I'd set. I should have known better. The ambush came on a Thursday evening when I was leaving work. I walked out to the parking garage and found both my parents standing next to my car, like they were staging an intervention. Mom was holding a manila envelope, and Dad had that grim expression he used to wear when I was in trouble as a teenager. "We need to talk," Dad announced without preamble. I looked around the nearly empty parking garage, suddenly very aware of how isolated we were. "How did you even get in here? This is a secure building." "We told the security guard we were your parents and it was a family emergency," Mom said, as if that justified stalking me at work. "There is no emergency, and showing up at my workplace is completely inappropriate." "What's inappropriate," Dad said, his voice rising, "is abandoning your family when they need you most." I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. Getting into a screaming match in my workplace parking garage wasn't going to help anyone. I haven't abandoned anyone. I've simply stopped being your personal bank account. "Is that what you think this is about? Money?" Mom stepped forward, holding out the envelope. "Fine, here." I looked at the envelope suspiciously. "What is it?" "A new will. We're changing it. You can have half of everything if you just stop this nonsense and help us with the roof repairs." I stared at her in disbelief. "You think this is about inheritance? Isn't it?" Dad crossed his arms. "You've been throwing a tantrum ever since you saw the will. Now we're offering to fix it." The casual way he dismissed my feelings as a tantrum made my blood boil, but it was Mom's next words that really set me off. "We're even going to make Marcus get a part-time job. See? We're compromising. A part-time job. At 26. And they thought this was a generous compromise. "You don't get it," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "This was never about the money. This was about respect. About being valued. About being treated like I matter." "Of course you matter," Mom started. "No, I don't. Not to you. I'm useful to you, which is completely different." I gestured to the envelope she was still holding. "The fact that you think you can fix this by bribing me with inheritance money just proves how little you understand about what you've done wrong." Dad stepped closer, and I could see the veins in his neck bulging. "What we've done wrong. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, put you through college, and I've spent the last 10 years repaying that debt with interest. We're more than even." "You don't get even with family," he shouted. "You're right," I said, surprising them both. "You don't get even with family. Family is supposed to be about love and mutual support. It's supposed to be about caring for each other, not just taking from the person stupid enough to keep giving." Mom's eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't moved this time. I had seen this performance too many times before. "All those years," I continued, "I thought I was being a good daughter. I thought you appreciated what I was doing. But you didn't appreciate it. You expected it. There's a huge difference." "We do appreciate," Mom started. "No, you don't. You know how I know? Because when I stopped giving, you didn't say thank you for everything you've done for us over the years. You didn't say we understand you need to focus on your own life now. You said, how could you abandon us? That tells me everything I need to know about how you really see me." The parking garage fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic. My parents stood there looking lost, like they couldn't comprehend how we'd gotten to this point. "So what do you want from us?" Dad asked finally. "I want you to figure out your own problems. I want you to treat Marcus like an adult and stop enabling his helplessness. I want you to respect my choices even when they inconvenience you. And most of all, I want you to understand that love isn't measured by how much money someone gives you. And if we don't," there was a challenge in Dad's voice, "then we don't have a relationship, because I'm not going back to being your ATM, and I'm not going to pretend that what we had before was healthy for any of us." Mom gasped dramatically. "You'd really cut us off completely?" "I'd really choose myself for once in my life, yes." I walked around to my car door and they reluctantly moved aside. As I unlocked it, Mom made one last desperate attempt. "Olivia, please. The roof is really leaking. We have buckets all over the living room. We're gonna have water damage if we don't fix it soon." I paused with my hand on the door handle. For just a moment, I felt that familiar pull of responsibility. But then I remembered something Marcus had said during his visit, that this was just the beginning. There would always be another emergency, another crisis, another reason why I needed to open my wallet and solve their problems. "Call a contractor," I said without turning around. "Get quotes. Take out a loan. Or better yet, ask Marcus to contribute to the household he's been living in rent-free for 6 years. He doesn't have that kind of money. Then maybe it's time he got the kind of job that would give him that kind of money." I got in my car and started the engine. Through the windshield, I could see my parents standing there, looking bewildered and angry. Part of me, a very small part, felt sorry for them. They genuinely didn't understand what they'd done wrong, and in their minds, I was the one being unreasonable. But feeling sorry for them wasn't enough to make me go back to the old dynamic. I'd spent too many years sacrificing my own needs for theirs, and I was finally learning what it felt like to put myself first. As I drove home, my phone started buzzing with text messages. I didn't need to look to know what they said. More guilt trips, more manipulation, more attempts to make me feel like the bad guy for setting boundaries. But for the first time in my adult life, the guilt wasn't working. I'd finally realized that their problems weren't my responsibility to solve, and their feelings weren't my responsibility to manage. It was a liberating realization, and a terrifying one, because I was about to find out just how far they'd go when they realized their old tactics weren't working anymore. The real test of my resolve was still coming, and it would force me to make a choice that would change our family forever. 3 months. That's how long it took for my family to finally understand that I wasn't bluffing, wasn't going through a phase, and wasn't coming back to save them from the consequences of their own choices. 3 months of silence, of watching their social media posts grow increasingly desperate, of ignoring voicemails from relatives who'd been recruited to their cause. And then, on a cold December morning, everything changed. I was at my kitchen table, enjoying my Saturday morning coffee and actually reading a book for pleasure, something I hadn't done in years, when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Marcus, but he looked different. His hair was shorter, he was wearing a button-down shirt I'd never seen before, and most surprisingly, he was alone. I opened the door cautiously. "Marcus? What are you doing here?" "Can we talk?" he asked, and his voice was different too. Less whiny, more serious. "Please. I have some things I need to tell you." I let him in, but kept my guard up. The last few months had taught me not to trust olive branches from my family. "You look different," I said as we sat down in my living room. He managed a small smile. "I got a job. A real job. Full-time, with benefits and everything." I raised an eyebrow. "Congratulations. What changed? You remember what you said about me not being able to handle things when Mom and Dad are gone? About losing everything they leave me?" I nodded. "You were right. After that conversation, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I realized I had no idea how to do anything. Pay bills, fix things around the house, even balance a checkbook. I was 26 years old and completely helpless." He leaned forward, his expression earnest in a way I'd never seen before. The roof thing was the final wake-up call. Mom was crying because water was dripping into her bedroom, Dad was raging about contractors being too expensive, and I just sat there, useless. I couldn't fix it, couldn't afford to pay for it, couldn't even comfort them properly, because deep down, I knew it was partly my fault. "How was it your fault?" Because if I'd been contributing to the household all these years like I should have been, they would have had savings for emergencies. If I'd been working instead of playing video games, I could have learned basic home maintenance. If I'd been an actual adult instead of an overgrown teenager, you wouldn't have had to carry the whole family on your back. I stared at him, genuinely shocked. This level of self-awareness was completely new for Marcus. So what did you do? I got a job at an insurance company. Started as a claims processor, but they say there's room for advancement. It's not glamorous, but it pays decent money and has good benefits. He paused. I also moved out. You moved out? I couldn't hide my surprise. Where? Apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I'm learning to cook, do laundry, pay my own bills. It's harder than I thought it would be, but also kind of satisfying. We sat in silence for a moment. I was trying to process this transformation, trying to figure out if it was real or just another manipulation tactic. Why are you telling me this? I asked finally. Marcus took a deep breath. Because I need to apologize, and because Mom and Dad are too proud to come here themselves, but they need to hear what I learned. What did you learn? That you were never the problem. You were the solution to problems that weren't yours to solve. And we all got so comfortable letting you be the solution that we never bothered to fix the actual problems. He stood up and walked to my window, looking out at the street. Do you know what happened after I moved out? Mom and Dad had to figure out their own meals, their own laundry, their own transportation to appointments. Suddenly, they weren't as helpless as they'd been pretending to be. They were pretending? Not consciously, maybe, but yeah, it's amazing how quickly people figure things out when their safety net disappears. He turned back to face me. They fixed the roof themselves. Well, Dad supervised while Mom held the ladder and they patched the worst spots with roofing cement. It's not pretty, but it stopped the leaks. They figured out payment plans for the bigger repairs. Mom even got a part-time job at the library. Mom's working 3 days a week. She says she likes having somewhere to go, people to talk to. I think she was more isolated than any of us realized. This was so much information to process that I didn't know where to start. How are they handling you moving out? Marcus laughed, but not in a mean way. Better than I expected. I think they were getting tired of having a grown man living in their house too. Dad's using my old room as an office now, and Mom turned the basement into a craft room. And the money situation? They're managing. It's tight, but they're managing. Turns out when you're not supporting a jobless adult child, your expenses go way down. He sat back down across from me. Olivia, I want you to know, the will thing, that was wrong. They know it was wrong now. Do they? Dad said something last week that really stuck with me. He said we spent so much time worrying about Marcus's future that we forgot to appreciate Olivia's present. I think that's the closest he's going to get to admitting he was wrong, but it's something. I felt tears prick at my eyes, which surprised me. I'd been angry for so long that I'd forgotten how much I'd wanted exactly this. Acknowledgement, understanding, change. There's something else, Marcus said quietly. They want to rewrite the will. Split everything equally. But they're afraid to ask because they think you'll see it as another bribe. Is it? No. They're doing it whether you come back or not. Because it's the right thing to do. We talked for another hour. Marcus told me about his job, his apartment, his slowly growing sense of independence. I told him about my life, the hobbies I'd rediscovered, the friends I'd reconnected with, the peace I'd found in not being constantly on call for family emergencies. Do you think, he hesitated, do you think we could have family dinners again sometime? Not the old kind where everyone expected you to fix their problems, but just normal family time? I considered this. Maybe, but things can't go back to the way they were. I don't want them to. The way they were wasn't working for anyone, even if we didn't realize it at the time. After Marcus left, I sat in my living room for a long time, thinking. The changes he'd described sounded real, but I'd been burned before by false promises and temporary improvements. But over the next few weeks, I started seeing evidence that this transformation might actually stick. Mom's Facebook posts were about her library job and her craft projects, not about ungrateful children. Dad was sharing articles about home repair and DIY projects. Marcus was posting pictures of his extremely modest but clean apartment and meals he'd cooked himself. Most importantly, none of them were asking me for anything. It took another month before I was ready to reach out. I started small. A text to Mom asking about her job, a comment on one of Marcus's apartment posts, a brief call with Dad about a book recommendation. The first family dinner was awkward, but in a normal way rather than a toxic way. We talked about work, current events, movies we'd seen. When Dad mentioned a minor plumbing issue, I tensed, waiting for the inevitable request for help. Instead, he told us about the YouTube tutorial he'd found and how he'd fixed it himself. I never realized how satisfying it is to solve your own problems, he said, and I could see he meant it. It's been 6 months now since that first dinner. We see each other regularly, but not out of obligation or crisis management. Mom and Dad have become surprisingly self-sufficient. Marcus has gotten 2 promotions at work, and I've maintained the boundaries that saved my sanity. Are we the perfect family now? Absolutely not. But we're a functional one, which is more than we ever were before. The most important thing I learned from this whole experience is that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their dysfunction. By stepping back and forcing my family to stand on their own, I didn't destroy our relationships. I made them healthier. My parents never directly apologized for the years of taking advantage of my generosity, but they didn't need to. Their changed behavior said everything that needed to be said. Marcus, on the other hand, has thanked me multiple times for kicking his butt into adulthood, as he puts it. And me? I finally learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary. I'm not responsible for solving everyone else's problems, and saying no doesn't make me a bad person or a bad daughter. Sometimes the best thing you can give someone isn't your help. It's the chance to prove they don't need it. If you're in a situation where you feel taken for granted, where you're always the one giving and never receiving, where your family treats you like a resource rather than a person, know that you deserve better. And know that it's okay to step back and demand that better treatment, even if it temporarily makes things uncomfortable. You can't control how other people respond to your boundaries, but you can control whether you maintain them. And sometimes, if you're lucky, stepping back gives everyone the space they need to grow into better versions of themselves. My family found their way back to each other, but even if they hadn't, I would have been okay. Because I finally learned the most important lesson of all, the only person's happiness I'm truly responsible for is my own. And for the first time in my adult life, I'm genuinely happy.